Yeah, 30 years ago, to start a business, you had to actually put some money on the table and you had to take a serious financial risk. In the era that I started in, there was no financial risk. There was a time risk, time, energy, and attention, but those are nothing comparatively to having put money on the table and you got to make that money back. You got a loan from the bank. You took a loan from your family. You know, that's a much bigger thing than just putting an hour or two into a YouTube video.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to have an old friend, Dre Baldwin, on. And just before we get started, I'm going to make sure I press the start button. The start button has been pressed, Dre, this time.
I can see the recording up there.
Awesome. You know, I haven't done that one before, but there's always a first. So speaking of firsts, I'm going to ask you a question you've never heard before except 20 minutes ago. Who is Dre Baldwin?
I've done a lot of interviews, talked to a lot of people. Nobody's ever asked that question. And
except me 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, I'm pretending that you didn't ask. So who is Dre? Dre is a former athlete who came up with a process that helps people, entities, organizations step their game up to their highest possible level using a framework that we created called Work on Your Game. That's the brand, that's the framework, that's the process.
I love that, Dre. So what did you play?
Well, I played professional basketball, played overseas outside of USA for 9 years, traveling through 8 different countries. Before that, I played Division III college basketball at a school called Penn State, Altoona.
And what did you love about that game?
Oh, it's the easiest job you have in your life in terms of at the professional level. Compared to entrepreneurship, there's a lot less work. It's a lot more fun. There's a lot less. I mean, it can be stressful on some levels, but nothing compared to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, a long day at work for a professional athlete is 4 hours. That's 2 practices. That's it. There's no 8-hour day as a professional athlete. There's no such thing. You can't play sport for 8 hours.
Right.
And I mean, you're traveling around the world on somebody else's dime. You're receiving a salary as well. Yeah. And you're literally playing a kid's game for a living. And when you're traveling around, I can speak specifically as a basketball player. You're a black guy and you're 6'4", walking around somewhere in Europe. Everybody knows why you're there and who you are. So you're a celebrity as soon as you walk into the grocery store. So, I mean, there's no better job than being a professional athlete.
I've never had that experience.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So, Dre, you've taken the metaphor of game and brought it forward into the business world. Let's talk about game. What do you mean by game?
When I say game, it's about the thing you're looking to accomplish or the thing that you're doing in order to get the accomplishment. And it's the entire mechanism / process of how it happens or what you're looking to make happen. All of that encompasses what I mean when I say game, quote unquote.
I first heard the metaphor of game from my high school English teacher. And he said, with regard to writing a paper, make a game of it. Because I think I was probably stuck. I had writer's block or something. And he said, just make a game of it. And that unblocked me because now I wasn't trying to accomplish something. He gave me the gift of being able to play. And I knew how to play. I still know how to play. And so I was able to play at it. And so I was able to write. Let's talk about the different kinds of games. So in my experience, people don't know that they can define a game, define the rules, and play the game and change the rules. And they don't have to tell other people that they're playing a particular game. And one example, the game of writing a book. Why do we choose to write a book? If I want to play that game, my rules might be I write an hour a day. My goal might be to publish. My goal might be to get 500 copies self-published on Amazon. My goal might be to get 1 copy to my mom. I don't have to follow other people's rules. I don't have to be on the New York Times bestseller list. That's someone else's goal. That's someone else's rule. So when you talk to people about playing games, what's the framework you help them create?
The framework is, first of all, just let's understand what game are we playing? Because a lot of times people are unclear on what game they're playing. Even when they're making up the game themselves, they're unclear on what game they're playing, let alone when you step into somebody else's game or a game that you did not yourself create and that you don't completely control the rules of. You need to understand what the rules of the game are, and you need to understand what the objective of the game is. I find a lot of people lose sight of the objective of the game. This is when you hear people proverbially say, mistaking the means for the ends. You forgot what the game was. All right, let's remember why we're here. What did we come here for? And that's how I help people. First of all, let's get clarity. I find in my work as a coach or anybody that I'm talking to is the most important thing I help people do is get clarity. What exactly are we doing? Where exactly are we going? How, why, when, where, and who? Those things a lot of people are unclear on, even when they are on the outside pretty successful. They just lack clarity on what exactly is the game here. How do we want to play?
Right. And what tends to get in the way of people in playing the game?
In terms of execution, the number one thing is they don't know what the end game is. They just haven't thought about, how do I know that I've won? That's what people are unclear on. How do I know that I've won the game? Because if you don't know how you win, then there's never a reason to stop playing.
And then what holds them back from playing full out?
What holds people back from playing full out is sometimes a lack of belief in themselves. That can often be the case, what it often boils down to. And then on the surface of that, what people often will say is not that. They'll say, well, I just don't have certain resources, information, knowledge, access, tools, money, friends, etc.
When I hear you say that, I think of the inner voice or the inner judge or the inner critic or head trash of I won't, I can't, I'm not worthy. As opposed to the entrepreneur who says, I can do anything with whatever I got. And okay, I've got these 3 assets on my desk. I'm going to go make it happen with those 3 assets. It could be just a pencil and an eraser and a cell phone, right? It doesn't have to be a stack of money. So that entrepreneur, his inner voice is saying, you can do it. In my experience, many people's inner voices, perhaps most inner voices, say at some level, you can't or you're not worthy. So how do you help people get through that?
First thing is we got to get clear on what's in the way so that we can address it. And really that inner voice is what the subconscious mind is about. And subconscious mind is controlling 85% of our thought processes, 85% of our habits, our actions. It controls breathing, blinking, all of those things, the subconscious mind. And consciously to compare is how everybody who's listening to this is processing our words. So things that I'm saying, you're consciously thinking about what I'm saying. But the subconscious mind is always running kind of in the background and processing everything around you, everything that even the things that you didn't hear, your subconscious mind heard them. All right, that's how the subconscious mind works. And to change that inner voice, you have to do the work on resetting your mind. That's the reason why it's called mindset.
Right.
Mind is set in a certain way. So altering the subconscious mind, there's only 3 ways it can be done. There is the repetition, that's taking in or doing anything over and over and over again, sometimes in volume. Then there is emotionalization, which is anything that it triggers a strong emotional response, and you can alter the subconscious mind even with one exposure, even a very brief exposure, such as a car accident that you survive. And then there's immersion. And immersion is when you're in an environment such as in the military, where you can't think of or do or access anything outside of that environment. And the environment is designed in such a way, such as you are kind of boxed in and closed in to where it can alter your subconscious mind in a shorter period of time simply because of the immersive experience. There's some people who do live events and they try to make it an immersive experience because they don't want you to be able to think about anything other than what's happening right there and then. Any one of those 3 can reprogram the subconscious mind. And most people by default are usually doing the first one, which is repetition. You go the same way every time. You talk to the same people every day. Listen to the same music. You have the same thought patterns. And that becomes a reflection of the law of inertia. Object in motion shall remain in motion. Object not in motion remains not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force, commonly known as momentum or stagnation. And most people get into a certain either momentum or stagnation, whatever you want to call it. Usually it's momentum when it's something they want, and stagnation was something that they don't want.
Right.
And you do it over and over again. And after the age of 25, let's just say the end of puberty, most adults do not change in any way. What I like to say, Lee, is that people just get older and uglier. Nothing else about them changes. Older, fatter, and uglier. That's 3. If you haven't seen any of your college classmates, you don't have to go to the reunion. I just told you what happened to them. They're the same people. And the reason why is because any change to the subconscious that happens after puberty must be intentional. It's the same thing with any aspect of humanity. If you have a child who's 12 years old, they're going to change on their own without trying until the end of puberty. But after puberty, if you're going to change, you must do it on purpose. And most people don't try to change on purpose after they become a certain type of person. And this is the reason why you get so much stagnation.
Because of the inertia. They're going down a path.
Right.
And because they're going down a path, they go down the path. Because they're on the path, they go down the path. And there's no interrupt.
That's right. That's a scientific law. So it's not even that they're choosing to do it. It's just how it goes.
It just happens. And you and I as coaches tend not to talk to those people very much. Because it's the people that wake up one morning and say, oh shit, I want my life to be different. They reach out to you and me and say, can you help me find a different way?
Right. And what we can try to do, and I try to do this, is try to reach for some of the people who are kind of on the fence.
Yep.
And this is what we do through conversations like this, or you put some videos on YouTube or post on LinkedIn. Somebody who might be on the fence, they might say, okay, that actually sounds good. Let me listen a little bit more. Let me take another step towards Lee and see what he's saying. And they might convert. But if I was giving somebody business advice, I'd say, finally, you already converted. Preach to the choir.
The people who are motivated to change are the ones who have realized at some level that life can be different. And they don't necessarily know that that little voice in their head is just a little voice in their head. It's not who they are. And for those of you listening, the little voice in your head is the one saying, What little voice? That's the little voice. I find it absolutely fascinating to work with people who they heard something once or 100 times as they were growing up, and they take that as a fact. And what they heard actually is an artifact of what happened when the person that said it was growing up. And so you can trace it back to, multiple generations potentially. Insert what does grandma cut the end of the brisket off before she puts in the pan? Well, 6 generations ago, they had small pans. It's not for taste.
Right.
And so the same thing here. You're spot on, Dre. People follow that inertia, or they're stuck in that inertia. And as a result, they generate results, they deliver results that are below what they could. They're subpar relative to what they could. And so for salespeople who are perfectly happy making $250,000 a year and have never closed $1 million deal, doesn't have to be that way. For someone who has always been a manager and has never been VP level or C level, doesn't have to be that way. For someone who's a B player, doesn't always have to be that way.
I agree. And it's a matter of, first of all, them believing that it's possible for things to be different, which often requires some level of exposure to something other than what they've seen, and tethered to a belief that that could possibly be them. Now, at the same time, that belief needs to be nurtured, because let's say somebody's 32 years old and they've lived a certain way, and then they come across someone who's living at 10 levels higher, and they look at that person and say, okay, well, I could possibly do that. So they're excited. The problem is, as soon as they leave the environment that got them excited, whether it's the book they're reading or the event that they went to or the person they were speaking to or the video they were watching, as soon as they turn that off, they go right back to their regular world that they were already in.
The old programming.
Right, exactly. So the 32 years of experience is going to beat the 32 minutes of exposure to the new possibility. So it has to be nurtured in such a way that they can kind of keep that light alive in their minds. This is why immersion matters so much. This is why repetition matters so much. And emotionalization as well, because when something's emotional to you, you'll probably remember it. So that's why all three of those modalities for programming the subconscious matter the way that they do.
So I find it absolutely fascinating, Dre. You said that people have to want to change. And I'm paraphrasing. I frequently find people maybe a half step before that. I don't know if they want to change. They see that it might be possible to have something different. And I help them build that want, right? It's the support, it's the coaching of, it doesn't have to be that way. That voice on your shoulder really is your father saying that to you 100 times over the years. Mm-hmm. And it's just a recording going off in your head. And you can say to that recording, hey, recording, fuck you.
Right.
And the first time I said that to a client and she repeated it back, I said, you go ahead and say it. She repeated that back to me. Huge smile broke out on her face, because that was the first break of that recording, the first break of the link between that particular inner judge and her actions, her core beliefs and her actions.
Right. And it's having that permission is a big thing. And it's interesting with adults, because you think an adult realizes they don't have to get anybody's permission. They can just do it. But a lot of people have been programmed their whole lives. I mean, you're at home with your parents and you go to school and you go get a job and you're asking permission your whole life.
It's usually an authority figure that has made the statements. So there is no perspective of, I have permission to say, fuck you.
Right, exactly. So when someone finally grants them that permission, and it could be a person talking to them, or it could be you see somebody doing something different, you're like, oh, you know what? I never thought about doing it that way. Let me try it. And then you realize, oh, there's the breakthrough.
Yeah, I see such release in people saying what they haven't been able to say. I was in a weekend workshop and was on stage with a woman who had been verbally abused by her husband, who was a drunk and just an abuser. And she carried this weight with her for years. I believe he was dead, right? He was gone. She couldn't go to him and say, I hate you, but she needed to say it. So we created an environment on stage where I stood in as her husband and she said it to me. And once she verbalized everything that she had to verbalize, she became a different person. The weight was off her shoulders. Of course, now I had all this shit to carry around, but no.
Right.
No, because I was uninvolved, I could just sit there and be the recipient of it without it affecting me. She felt I was receiving it.
Right.
And because she felt I was receiving it, she felt like she was actually delivering it. And so that cleared her of the feelings that she'd carried around for so many years, which got in her way of then being successful, being an independent woman. And it was just so cool to be able to help someone verbalize what she'd been carrying around inside for so long.
Yeah, it's interesting that people carry that kind of stuff, and how, I mean, the way you're explaining it, how easily, they can be helped when they get the person with the right insight to help them do it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we tell people all the time, if you feel something, write the letter, but don't send it. Stick it in your drawer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing. If you feel like you've been hurt, write it down. State your feelings, put it in a drawer. You don't necessarily need to communicate it. Half of the value of writing it is just getting it out. And then if there's something that has to be addressed on a person-to-person basis, that's separate. But in most cases, the person that's done the damage didn't do it consciously, didn't do it intentionally, didn't know they were doing it, and wouldn't have done it if they were aware of the damage they were doing. And so to go back and say, I hate you because, doesn't serve the recipient. And that person saying, this person said, fuck you, is served her to get it out and to realize that all of the messaging that she had received, it didn't have to have any impact.
Right.
So you made a really important point. You and I, coaches, facilitate that process of becoming aware that things don't have to be the way they are.
Very true. That's often our job, is really just facilitating the change that people want to create. It's not so much, a lot of people tend to think coaching is about having all the answers, but it's really not. It's really about asking the right questions. Mm-hmm. And the best coaches ask the right questions and hold space for their clients to come to the conclusions. Really, a lot of it is on their own. Now, yes, we do have a lot of answers. We have a lot of information. It's maybe one of the reasons why people find us, but it's our ability to pull that material out of people that actually makes us valuable. That's what education is actually about.
Mm-hmm. We see patterns and we help people take the next step on the pattern we think we see. And it may or may not be the right 8-step process or 24 steps that they need to take, but let's take them from wherever they are to the next step so that they see new and different possibilities.
That's right. Exactly.
So how'd you get into coaching? Once you left the professional sports world, what caused you to choose this path?
Well, actually what happened was I made a bunch of videos on YouTube for basketball. So a lot of people who know me from basketball know me because of YouTube, not because I played overseas. Most basketball players don't watch overseas basketball. So I used to just teach people how to practice, how to do drills, et cetera. Eventually, I started talking about mindset for athletes because they were asking, because they found out about my background. I barely played high school ball, played D3 college ball. So they wanted to know what kept me going. So I started talking about mindset and they appreciated it. And that's when people who also didn't play sports they would see those same videos. And they would say, well, hey, I know you're making this for basketball. You seem to be a basketball type of creator, but the mindset stuff applies to me as well. And I don't play basketball. So that told me that could be an audience I could serve after sports, because I always knew, Lee, that I wanted to get out of sports if I wasn't going to be playing. I wasn't going to become a coach or analyst or a trainer. I want to play, and when I'm done playing, that's it. But I didn't know what the next thing would be. So when I saw that the mindset piece was valuable, I said, okay, well, I can just make content the same way I am. I'll just drop the basketball stuff and just talk about mindset. So that's what I figured I would do. This is about 2010. I got the idea. I kept playing until 2015. At that point, this is when putting yourself out there and being able to make money from it became a thing between about 2010 and 2015. This is when we started to hit critical mass.
Right.
Self-publishing became a thing. Everyone was on social media. Eventually, it went from everyone consuming social media to everyone creating social media in that 5-year period.
Right.
And I learned how to create my own products and sell them. My first product was a $4.99 training program for basketball players. We sold those by the thousands because I had such an audience, basketball players. And during that period, I also started writing my own books, and self-publishing books, creating courses based around mindset. And I just learned so many things I can do right here from the comfort of my couch with an internet connection. Yeah. And I was talking about this earlier today. I was talking to an audience and just explaining 30 years ago, to start a business, you had to actually put some money on the table and you had to take a serious financial risk. In the era that I started in, there was no financial risk. There was a time risk, time, energy, and attention, but those are nothing comparatively to having put money on the table and you got to make that money back. You got a loan from the bank. You took a loan from your family. That's a much bigger thing than just putting an hour or two into a YouTube video. So it's a lot easier to start businesses these days. I was able to start a business with no real financial investment. So I was learning more about business. And as I learned more, my superpower, Lee, is not basketball or mindset or any of these things. My superpower is my ability to, once I understand something, I know how to break it down and articulate it and explain it.
Say that again, because I always ask people what their superpower is, and not everybody is so present to what it is. So your superpower is the ability to see things and break them down into their component parts.
And then put them back together.
And then put them back. I was going to say, and then what? And then put them back together.
In a way that anyone can understand, even if they never considered the concept.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so to continue where I was at, I realized that this was a superpower. I know it now, but even looking back, because the first thing that got me known on the internet was breaking down basketball.
Yeah.
But then when I started breaking down mindset, people like that kind of just as much, if not more. And then as I learned more about business and entrepreneurship, there were people out there who had more experience than me, but they could not explain it the way I could explain it. And once I understood it, I could break it down and help you understand it, even though I haven't even been doing it that long, or at least at that time.
Knowledge is useless if you can't communicate it.
Exactly. So the communication skill is a huge thing. And I tell people this all the time. Communication is a future-proof skill.
Yeah.
Right? As long as you can communicate, you always have an opportunity in whatever you do. You can be an accountant, you can be a mechanic, you can be a school teacher, but you must have the ability to explain what's in your head. If you can't explain it, then it's stuck there. And I tell most of my coaching clients the same thing. So as I was explaining and I was learning more about entrepreneurship, talking about that, et cetera, in 2015, I used to do live streams on this app called Periscope. Remember Periscope?
Yep.
Yeah. So Periscope was, I think, it was by itself. And then I think got connected to like Twitter, and then it got bought out or removed, whatever it was. So I would do Periscopes on Periscope, live streams on Periscope every day for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I was starting to build up a consistent audience. And one day somebody was in the comments and they said, "Hey, do you offer coaching?" I never coached anybody in my life.
And you said, sure.
I said, yes. Yes. It was obvious to me. I could read between the lines that this guy liked what I was saying. He liked my style of communicating. So he said, "Do you offer coaching?" I said, yeah. I said, "Just email me." Because at the time, Periscope didn't even have, I don't think it even had DMs or anything. I just gave him my email and he actually followed through and emailed me. And I charged this guy like $500. I coached him for 3 months. And that was my first coaching client. And he gave me a positive review, testimonial, case study. I said, okay, I'm a coach now. Yep. And from that point forward, I just put coach in you ask, what do I do? I would say coaching is something that I do, but it's not like I was out there like trying to get coaching clients. Yeah. I just said, I am a coach because I've done coaching. Just like when I got my first consulting deal, I said, okay, now I'm a consultant. I got my first speaking gig. Now I'm a speaker. And once you do it once, you've done it.
Exactly.
Right? So it wasn't until about because my first thing when I got out of playing basketball, I was really focused on professional speaking because, as I said, I have this ability to communicate and I had this concept and I used to play sports and I knew people who were pro speakers that said, "It's great. You're an athlete." They like that. Right. And you can explain what worked in sports can work in business. That's a good thing to do.
You're tall and good looking and well spoken. And people will listen. So there you go. You're a professional speaker.
Right. That was the idea. So that's when I did a couple of my first TEDx talks. And speaking of what we were talking about is that a lot of people think the game is one thing, is another thing. The professional speaking game is not about having a great speech.
Say more about that.
I have a great speech, but I know people who have mediocre speeches who speak more than I speak. Even back then, that was the case. Now, I don't go after speaking business now the way that I was from 2015 to about 2020. And during that time period, I was spending a lot of time. The majority of the time was not giving speeches. The majority of the time was finding leads, putting them in the CRM, and following up. That was what you spend most of your time doing.
Right.
So you can get an opportunity to speak. Mm-hmm. And then what I realized is that, this business has nothing to do with the quality of your speech.
Right.
This has everything to do with how do you position yourself? Do the right people who can make a decision know you, like you, and trust you? And can they put you in front of their audience and not put their job at risk? That was basically what the game was about.
That's sales 101, buddy.
Exactly. Especially when you're talking organizations, big bureaucratic organizations, which is what I was spending my time reaching out to. And I realized a few things. Number one, I'm kind of outspoken. So one of the things you talked about a few minutes ago was that people getting that permission to say something that they always wanted to say, but they didn't say. See, I don't have that problem. Anything I want to say, I actually say it.
Mazel tov.
Right. And I put it out publicly. So I don't have that problem. But the flip side, the trade-off of that, because everything in life has a trade-off. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, is that when you say whatever you want to say, there are some things you said that prevent you from going into rooms that you otherwise would have been able to get into had you not said it.
Are you okay with that?
I am okay with it. I knew that from the beginning.
I don't want to be in those rooms, buddy. If they don't like something I've said and it's come from my heart,
right?
Fuck them.
Exactly. And
oh, by the way, can we swear on this podcast?
Was your show?
Yes.
Okay, so I knew from the beginning, okay, if I start talking about certain stuff, anything that people have different opinions on, that a college or a university, because I often get people saying, "Dre, you'd be great talking to young people and college students who are about to graduate. Why don't you speak at colleges?" Well, here's why I don't speak at colleges. Because if a college is going to hire a speaker, I had this happen once, and it happens. They'll have a meeting, a committee. There's 8 people on the committee, and they throw out all the names. They say, "All right, Dre Baldwin's a name." And it's not that they will all dislike me, but if even one person on that 8-person committee finds anything objectionable that's come out of my mouth, that's it. I'm not getting chosen. They'll just pick the person who hasn't said anything to offend anybody. And I understand that. And that's the trade-off of the game.
You're okay with that?
Absolutely. So continuing, as I was getting into the speaking business, it's not like I didn't do any business. I did. I leveled myself up because my mentor in speaking, she was the one who was a full-time speaker. And she said, the way you know you're a great speaker, Dre, is not because people filled out they call them the smile sheets, where they rate you 1 through 5, and nobody cares. That's nothing. It's useless. And it's not if they give you a standing ovation either. It's, did the person who booked you try to book you again? Or does somebody in the audience try to book you for their event after they hear you at this event? That's how you know you're good, because this is a business.
Right.
So do you get business from the current business? That's how you know you're good. So I started off, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have an in. I did a whole bunch of free gigs from 2015 to about 2017, 18. I did a bunch of free stuff. But all the free stuff, when I got off the stage, I got offered some paid stuff. That's how I knew I was good. And I was just working that up, trying to make it work.
No. You already knew you were good. You already knew you were good.
I was good at speaking.
Yeah.
And then I had the business results that said, okay, this proves it. I'm going to keep going on this. But there were 2 problems with the speaking business. And it's the same 2 problems. Well, one of them is what I just told you, is that there's a bunch of mediocre speakers who do a lot of speaking gigs simply because they have the right relationships and they haven't pissed anybody off.
Yeah. And it's all vanilla. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of them suck. And number 2 is that in the speaking business, you're only as good as your next gig. And your gig is based on somebody approving you to be on the stage.
Right. Who's never met you or doesn't know anything about you.
Exactly. And you have to keep selling yourself to someone to get approval to get on the stage. Not like, I mean, you can do your own events technically, but not in the way that I'm talking about. I didn't like that. It was similar to basketball, if you think about it. As a professional athlete in a team sport, only way you can play is that somebody on some team has to look at you and say, yes, you're chosen. I didn't like being in a position of needing to be chosen all the time. I wanted to do the choosing. And that's one of the reasons why it was easy for me to get out of sports when I did. And it's another reason why I was looking at the speaking business saying, I will do speaking gigs. So someone reaches out to me for a speaking gig today, I'll do it. You pay, I'll do it. But I'm not spending my day looking for speaking gigs. I don't want to be in that business. And then, of course, you had the virus in 2020. So then there were no speaking gigs.
Right.
So that's when I started focusing more on the coaching side of things. I said, I could do a lot better job if I only had to sell one person and I get to talk to them one-on-one.
Right.
And I can work with them for 6 months or a year or 3 months rather than just get up, give a speech for 60 minutes. Most people if I give a speech on Tuesday, by Saturday, you're going to forget 98% of what I said anyway. So am I really making an impact doing this? Yes, you are, but not really. Right. The real impact is when you can really spend time with a person.
10% of the audience will hear you. The other 90% at some level don't.
Right. They're not hearing anything. They all forget everything you said anyway. They might remember one concept. When I give a speech, they usually remember one concept that I said.
I specifically tell people, I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff. I want you to listen for one thing to put to work tomorrow. And then let me know how it goes.
Exactly. So what I started doing around 2020, I said, I want to bring things in-house. Not many other people talk about that. So I want to bring things in-house. So let me focus on selling my books, my courses, my programs. And what can I do high ticket? That's maybe a mastermind coaching. That's when I really started to focus on the coaching because I knew I had an audience of people who really did resonate with my stuff. And going back to what I just said, in the professional speaking business, especially if you're doing things like corporate or university, because these are bureaucratic and it's all about politics. It's all about people not getting fired. That's what it is. Don't get fired. In that industry, if you say something that pisses somebody off in that space, at the same time, there are 3 people who love what you said, but they love what you said quietly.
Yeah.
They don't announce that they love what you said because they can't afford to announce that they like what you said. So they quietly like you. So you build up what I call a silent majority. Those are the people who really like your stuff, but they can't announce that they like your stuff. The people who don't like your stuff, you hear them really loud. I knew I had that.
Let me stop you in the conversation. What I heard you say was you were in a process-centric world that the rules didn't work for you. So you changed the game, changed the rules. Now you're about to talk about an outcome-focused world because coaching is 100% outcome-focused.
That's right.
So you've changed the game to becoming outcome-focused.
Right. Yes. Performance-based business is what I say. Performance and results-based business. Those are the 2 phrases I use all the time when I'm talking to anyone, and it makes perfect sense because I play sports. Sports, all that matters is a scoreboard. All right. Nobody has to like you. They could all hate you, but if you had the most points, they still have to give you the trophy.
I tell my coaching clients, I'm going to say things that might piss you off, and I'm going to say it with love, and I hope you can take it on board and hear it for where it's coming from. And if I'm a good enough communicator, it'll land in a way that you actually hear and consider doing things differently. And if it doesn't work, you're going to fire me.
Long story short.
I'm okay with any of that. I don't give a shit about the outcomes, right? I don't give a shit about the process outcomes. I care a lot about client outcomes.
That's right. The speaking business is very much, as you said, process. I call it political. Bureaucratic is political. It's about, again, who knows you and do they like you? And the sports world is all about the outcome, the result, the trophy. And in the business world, you're measured by your outcomes, by the results that you produce. So I said, let me just bring things in-house. And if you're coming into my house, I get to make the rules. And if you're coming into my house, you're choosing to come in my house.
Right.
I'm not asking you to come in. You're coming into my house. I knew I had quality material because even in the world that I didn't like, I was still getting positive results.
Right.
There's not enough of them. Yeah. So let me bring things in-house and start doing things this way. And that's what I've been doing ever since. This is the place that I belong. Again, I will still do outside stuff. If college calls me and says, we want you to come speak. I said, okay, you Google me, right? Okay, I'm coming. And if someone asks me to come speak at a conference, I'll go do it. But I'm not pursuing that anymore. I'll take it if it comes, but I'm not going after it. I'm going after the things that I can 100% control, because the last thing I'll say on this, are you familiar with Dan Kennedy, the marketing guy? He wrote a bunch of books called No BS Sales, No BS Marketing.
So I'll look it up.
Okay. So one of the things Dan Kennedy talks about is, he's probably about 70 years old, probably pretty much retired now. But one of the things that he talks about is, he wrote a book called Magnetic Marketing. Maybe you heard of that. And he talks about that when you're a professional speaker or just a influencer, intellectual property salesperson, that if you don't build your in-house thing, that when you stop speaking, your entire business falls apart.
Poof.
Right. And he talks about people like Zig Ziglar, who I'm sure you've heard of.
Yep.
And people like Zig, that when they passed, they hadn't built anything in the house because they were just doing speaking gig after speaking gig after speaking gig. And you stop doing gigs, the money stops, but you didn't build that inside thing that you own and that you control. Well, what are you going to do? Like, you have nothing left. You can't pass the speaking gig on to your kids. So I was thinking about that. How can I build something that, let's say I decide I want to quit in 10 years. Can I pass this on to my son with a set of instructions written in a Google Doc? Just do this and the money's going to keep coming in.
Right.
Can't do that with a speaking gig. So that's why I wanted to build the inside thing, something that could last longer than I last.
Yeah. That's an awesome journey. I appreciate you sharing that. Dre, what's the big game you're up to now?
Big game that I'm up to now is really making Work on Your Game into the star of the show rather than Dre Baldwin being the star of the show. I'm still, at this point, still the star of the show.
Personal brand versus
the system.
Leadership brand, yeah.
Right. So the system being the thing that, hey, we want Work on Your Game. What's Work on Your Game? Oh, this guy named Dre Baldwin made it. Right now, it's we want Dre Baldwin. Who's Dre Baldwin? He has this thing called Work on Your Game. So now we're just trying to switch positions. All right, get Dre Baldwin in the passenger seat, Work on Your Game in the driver's seat. So that's the biggest thing now. It's not so much about me being the star on the stage or in the conference or on the cover of the book. It's about Work on Your Game is what you're getting. And not only that part, but also that is scalable. You can't scale a person, but you can scale a system. So Work on Your Game is a system. And it's about now, how do we start getting that to the buyers of systems rather than the buyers of a person?
Tim Galway wrote The Inner Game of Tennis in 74 or 75. It was about not thinking your way through taking a shot from, I'm not a basketball person.
Baseline.
The baseline. Yeah, there we go. Taking a shot from the baseline, or not thinking about hitting a serve, but letting go and letting your body do it, because your body knows what good looks like. And for 20 or 30 years, Tim Galway was the inner game of tennis. Tim Galway is an older gentleman now, and there's an inner game institute, and there's an inner game of business. There's an inner game of sales, right? And there's a whole movement based around that original work that he did in the 70s. It doesn't require him to be standing at the lectern anymore. So it's the same thing. So Dre, I want to get back to something else that you mentioned. Did coaching find you?
Yes. Yeah, coaching found me because someone came to me and said, are you a coach? I wasn't thinking about it. And I was an athlete. So when you're an athlete, you're always getting coached.
Yeah. So for me, it was similar to that. I had a similar experience and I resisted for a long time. This was 25 years ago when I first started coaching, and I resisted because I thought coaching was small. I thought coaching one-on-one was small potatoes, where I want to go build a tech business that does XYZ for the world. And then I want to manage sales teams because it's bigger than individual coaching. And eventually I came to the realization that my purpose and coaching are in 100% alignment. My purpose, the reason why I'm here on this earth, is to help people transform. For me, that's what coaching is, helping people transform, helping them to let go of that inner voice, helping them to let go of the head trash of their prior programming, and to help them transform how they interact with family members, with customers, with managers, with prospects, with employees, mostly customers. Most of my coaching clients are enterprise salespeople, and it's the focus on what that customer cares about, as opposed to the process of selling or the technology that they're selling. Because in the technology world, the technology wizards have built a religion around the bits and bytes matter, and customers don't give a shit. They just have business results they want to generate.
Right.
The technology wizards are playing a different game, and there's a translation that's required.
And there was something else that you said there. When you mentioned Inner Game of Tennis, I was looking it up because I've been looking at the books on your shelf too, seeing if I have them. Inner Game of Tennis is in my library. I just haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read it. And many people have mentioned it to me. And one of the things you said is that you don't try to make shots in tennis. Did you read the autobiography of Andre Agassi, by the way?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. So one of the things that Agassi talks about, and you know who he is, right? Yep. So he was a great tennis player, dominating, but then he went through a slump. And he got a coach, and his coach said to him, listen, stop trying to hit winners, because in tennis, they call it the winner. You hit that shot that gets the highlight. Don't try to hit winners. Just hit the ball over the net. Just keep the ball in play. And the ball just stays in play between you and the opponent. Your skills versus his skills, you're going to win. Just keep the ball in play. If you just keep it in play, eventually they're going to make a mistake before you do. And over the course of the match, you're going to win. I didn't even play tennis. I think I would have been good at tennis. But in basketball players would often come to me. Are you a basketball fan? You watch? A
little bit, yeah.
Okay, so there's a guy named Kyrie Irving. You heard of him? Okay, so Kyrie Irving, Derrick Rose, around that 2010, 2011 period, they were very popular players.
Yep.
So a lot of young people will come to me saying, Dre, how can I dribble like Kyrie Irving or Derrick Rose? Or how can I do moves like them in the game? And I would explain to them what you were just talking about. Because in boxing, for example, which is a sport that I enjoy, I'm not a boxer, but I enjoy boxing now. They say in boxing, let your hands go. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? That means you can't be in the ring thinking about, I'm going to throw a left hook. Because by the time you think about it, you got hit with one.
You're on the floor. Yeah.
So you have to let your hands go and just let your skills take over. Because in boxing, you don't have time to think. It's the same thing in tennis. It's the same thing in basketball. You don't have time to think of a move. By the time you think of the move, it's too late to do the move. So you practice the skills so much that when you get into live action, your subconscious mind, which has already been programmed by the repetition of your practice, i.e. your training, it takes over. So the person I first heard say it was Tim Ferriss, who's a 4-hour guy. And he said, you don't rise to the level of the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. And that's what being a professional is all about. Number one hallmark of a professional is preparation.
I love
You're prepared ahead of time for the situation. So when the situation happens, you can immediately respond to it because you prepared for it already. And that's what the Inner Game of Tennis sounds like what he was about as well.
It absolutely is. And I read a book by Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human, last fall. And Pink said, improv and selling are exactly the same thing. He said, in improv, you have to listen, right? You have to pay attention to your partner. You have to listen. You have to be present. And every statement is an offer. If a customer says yes, that's an offer. If a customer says not today, that's an offer. If a customer says I have to think about it, that's an offer. It's never a no. A no is an offer. It depends on what you're going to do with it. And so I took a deep dive into improv. I'm now in an improv group and I love it. And it's no different than enterprise selling. If I'm working with a partner and a technical person, I have to be present to what's going on, the body language, the words, the interaction. If I have to stop and think about what a prospect said, too late.
Right.
One of the things you mentioned was practice. In the professional selling world, there's not enough deliberate practice. In sports, absolutely. 90% of professional sports is not playing, it's practicing, right? Maybe 95%.
That's right. I had a 10-1 rule when I played, 10 practices every one game.
And in professional sales, in my world, it's 99-1 in terms of selling versus practicing. Now, people do a lot of prep, but prep is not practicing, right? And I saw an example of this. I was doing an inside sales team call, 10 people in the room, one person at a time called a prospect. A young guy got a person on the phone and he said, I saw on your LinkedIn profile you're involved in this project. And she said, oh, yeah, you must have seen that on LinkedIn and I'm not involved in that project anymore. I'm involved in something else. And he said, oh, okay, thanks, goodbye. And it's like, you spent 3 hours trying to get someone on the phone and you hadn't had the deliberate practice of the pivot. Same as sports. If your opponent moves right, you go right. If your customer goes left, you go left. He said, oh, my customer went left. I'm hanging up because I didn't have the practice of the pivot. Deliberate practice is so important. The movie, The Karate Kid, that's the original example of the wax on, wax off. Why am I doing this, Mr. Miyagi? You'll see, right? You'll see. And eventually he puts it together. With my clients, I do a lot of role playing and they always go, I hate role playing. It's like, great, let's make the mistakes here now in a safe place. Right. And then when you're talking with a customer, you won't make those mistakes. You'll make other mistakes. That's fine. But you'll be more prepared, better prepared.
Exactly. And I like that concept of the analogizing improv to sales. I never thought about that. And I've never even done improv, but I get the concept because whatever the other person says, you can't just say, well, I don't know what to say. You have to say something. Right? You got to keep going and keep it going and you got to pass the ball back.
You have to be so incredibly present.
Right. You got to keep the flow going.
You might enjoy it.
I think I would. In sales, that's very much the thing. And And what I tell people is, I was doing some training for a company that they sell insurance, and their whole thing is role play. They are really, really big on training, role play everything so that their people can close sales. And they're selling insurance. It's like the static product, and they still got to keep training these people.
It's a commodity, except it's not.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
That's what they say. And one of the questions was, well, Dre, how do I follow the script without sounding scripted? And that's kind of what improv is. There's a script, but you don't want to sound scripted. So when I do high ticket sales calls, I am following a script. But if you watch the Zoom recording of one of my sales calls, you wouldn't think I was following a script. You say it so often that it kind of becomes yours, and it feels like I'm just talking to you, but I'm taking you down the path to the close. It doesn't feel like I am, but I am. And when you're good at it, that's how it should look.
And if you're authentic and you care about the other person, right? If your intent is good, then what happens works. It's just magic, and it works.
That's right.
Dre, where can people find you?
Workonyourgame.com, the best place to find me, but I'm also on all the social media platforms. So pick the one you like. Just look up my name, Dre Baldwin. I'm public everywhere, so very easy to find and active on all apps.
That's awesome. This has been a fabulous conversation. We've touched on a bunch of stuff. A couple of key takeaways. Number one, screw the inner voice.
Or get it on your team. Get it on your team. It's going to be there either way.
Absolutely. Number two, you can shoot high, take on more than you think you can take on.
Yes.
3, own your game. What other takeaways do we have?
It's moving before you're ready, as you said. Remove your luxury of time. It's something that I talk to people about all the time. I try to remind myself of that. Take away your luxury of time, because we all tend to think we have time until you don't have time. You only got to be wrong once about having time, and then your opportunity is gone. And it's just stay open-minded. I just stay open-minded. I'm always looking, listening, hearing things that I think are interesting. There's something you said here when we're done recording I'm going to ask you about. I'm looking at the books on your shelf. Do I have those books? I've never heard of that one. Literally, while you're talking, I'm looking at them. So
that's why they're there. I used to have a fake background, and then I got this old vintage bookcase, and some old friends are on that shelf now.
Right. So it's just staying open-minded. You never know where the right idea may come from, or the next bright idea may come from, but you got to stay open to catching it. It's always out there. You just may not notice it.
Here's the last one that I can't believe hasn't come up yet. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
So shoot your shot.
That's right. Yeah, you got to shoot your shot.
Yeah. Dre, this has been fabulous.
Yes, it's been a great conversation, Lee. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for sharing your audience with me.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Dre.
Absolutely.